Imagine this scene. You're driving down a lonely two-lane highway, the kind that cuts straight through the heart of the country. The sun is melting into the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. But the beauty is lost on you because your eyes are glued to the dashboard. The gas light has been on for the last 20 miles, and your stomach is in knots. Up ahead, a small cluster of lights appears, a tiny town materializing out of the twilight. Relief washes over you, but it's short-lived, because the nearest town ahead has one piece of advice from the people who live there. Don't stop. Not for gas, not for food, not for anything. This isn't the opening scene of a horror movie. This is real America. We're conditioned to think that danger lurks in the shadows of towering skyscrapers and sprawling metropolises. We hear about the crime rates in Chicago, Los Angeles, New York. But what about the places in between? The quiet, overlooked towns that dot the map, the ones you might pass through without a second thought. The truth is, sometimes the most profound danger isn't in the places everyone talks about, but in the places everyone has forgotten. Today, we're not just looking at surface-level crime stats you can find on any website. We're going deeper, into the real stories, the local warnings, and the shocking data that explains why some places earn a reputation you have to respect. This is about understanding the landscape of our own country, the hidden pockets where the veneer of small-town charm is paper-thin. It's about being prepared, being aware, and knowing that sometimes the safest thing you can do is just keep driving. We're going to explore 10 of these towns, places where locals will tell you to fill up your tank one town over. So, before we get into it, if you find this kind of information valuable, if you believe in being prepared, hit subscribe. Not for the algorithm, for situational awareness. Let's break it down. Our first stop, or rather, our first town to drive right past, is Bogalusa, Louisiana. On paper, the name has this almost musical quality, derived from the Choctaw words for dark water. But for the people who know this place, the name has taken on a much darker, more sinister meaning. They don't call it Bogalusa, they call it Bogalusa. And that's not a nickname you get for having a friendly, welcoming atmosphere. It's a name earned through years of violence, fear, and a deep-seated distrust in the very systems meant to protect you. It's the kind of place where you'll hear a local say, with no hint of irony, if you're in trouble here, don't call 911. Call your family, 'cause they'll get there faster. Think about that for a second. The advice isn't just about slow response times. It's a profound statement about the breakdown of community trust and public safety. When the people who live in a town tell you that the official emergency services are not your best option, you are in a fundamentally different kind of dangerous place. The statistics back up the sentiment. With a violent crime rate that has, at times, been more than 10 times the national average, Bogalusa consistently ranks as one of the most dangerous places, not just in Louisiana, but in the entire country. And we're not just talking about petty crime. We're talking about a level of violence that has become tragically normalized for its residents. The town itself sits in Washington Parish, surrounded by the piney woods of southeastern Louisiana. It was once a booming timber town, built around a massive sawmill. But like so many industrial towns in America, when the industry dried up, so did the opportunities. The economic decline left a vacuum, and into that vacuum crept poverty, desperation, and with them, an entrenched culture of violence. The sprawling abandoned buildings and quiet decaying neighborhoods are a constant reminder of what was lost, and they provide the perfect backdrop for the illicit activities that now define much of the town's reputation. The issues here are deep-rooted and complex. It's a story of economic collapse, systemic neglect, and a cycle of violence that has been passed down through generations. The police department is chronically underfunded and understaffed, struggling to police a community where many see them not as protectors, but as an occupying force. This isn't a simple case of bad guys versus good guys. It's a tangled web of history, poverty, and a pervasive sense of hopelessness that makes everyday life a gamble for the people who call Bogalusa home. So when you're driving through Louisiana and you see the sign for Bogalusa, you have to understand the weight of that local nickname. Bogalusa isn't a joke, it's a warning. It's a reflection of a grim reality that the people there live with every single day. It's the reason they tell outsiders, and each other, to be careful, to be aware, and if you don't have a very good reason to be there, to just keep on driving until the town is a distant memory in your rearview mirror. As we head west, our journey takes us to Stillwell, Oklahoma, a town that presents a jarring contradiction. If you were just passing through, you might see the signs proclaiming it the strawberry capital of the world. You might imagine a quaint, charming little town with roadside stands selling fresh fruit and a friendly small-town vibe. But if you were to ask a local from a neighboring community for advice, they might tell you something that completely shatters that image. They might say, the two biggest businesses in Stillwell are the jail and the strawberries, and you don't want to get mixed up with either. Another common piece of advice you'll hear is even simpler. Don't stop. Don't even slow down. This stark warning isn't just hyperbole. It's born from a reality that is far from sweet. Stillwell, the county seat of Adair County, grapples with a violent crime rate that is staggeringly high for a town of its size. The cheerful strawberry branding masks deep-seated issues of poverty, drug addiction, and a pervasive sense of lawlessness. The problems are so severe that they've earned the town a reputation that extends far beyond its borders. It's a place where the idyllic image of rural America collides head-on with some of its harshest realities. Much like Bogalusa, the roots of Stillwell's problems are tied to economic desperation. Located in one of the poorest counties in Oklahoma, job opportunities are scarce, and hope can be even scarcer. This environment has become a breeding ground for crime, particularly methamphetamines, which have ravaged the community. The drug trade fuels a cycle of violence, theft, and despair that the local law enforcement agencies are ill-equipped to handle. With limited funding and a vast rural area to cover, the police are stretched impossibly thin. The result is a community where many feel they have to fend for themselves. There's a palpable distrust of outsiders, and a sense that the official rule of law is a distant concept. Stories circulate about carjackings, robberies, and violent encounters happening in broad daylight. The warning to not even slow down comes from a very real place of fear. A stalled car or a moment of hesitation can make you a target. The residents who live there have adapted to this reality, but for a traveler just passing through, it's an environment that is incredibly unforgiving. So, while the annual Strawberry Festival might paint a picture of wholesome fun, the day-to-day reality for many in Stillwell is anything but. The contrast is what makes it so unsettling. It's a reminder that even in a place that celebrates something as simple and joyful as a strawberry, a darker harvest of violence and fear can be growing just beneath the surface. The strawberry capital is a name, but the warnings from those who know it best are the reality you need to heed. Our next location is Pine Bluff, Arkansas, a city that feels haunted by the ghost of its former self. Driving into Pine Bluff, you can see the remnants of prosperity. There are grand historic buildings and wide boulevards that speak to a time when it was a thriving agricultural and industrial hub on the banks of the Arkansas River. But that time is long gone. Today those buildings are often vacant, their windows boarded up, and a palpable sense of fear and decay hangs in the air. For years, Pine Bluff has held the unenviable title of one of the most dangerous cities, not just in Arkansas, but in the entire United States. The statistics are grim and relentless. The city's violent crime rate, particularly its homicide rate, is consistently off the charts, rivaling and often surpassing that of major metropolitan areas. But it's not just the numbers that tell the story. It's the feeling on the ground. It's the stories from residents who have learned to live with a constant, low-level hum of anxiety. They talk about not going out after dark, about hearing gunshots so frequently they can often distinguish the caliber of the weapon, and about the unspoken rules of which streets to avoid and which neighborhoods are effectively no-go zones. The economic collapse here was catastrophic. The industries that built the city left, and nothing came to replace them. This led to a mass exodus of anyone who could afford to leave, hollowing out the middle class and concentrating poverty in its wake. With a shrinking tax base, city services crumbled. The police force became overwhelmed, schools struggled, and abandoned properties became magnets for crime. The sense of community pride that once existed has been eroded by decades of neglect and violence, replaced by a survivalist mentality. A local anecdote you might hear paints a clear picture. Someone might tell you about a relative who refuses to stop for gas in Pine Bluff, even if their tank is on empty. They'll drive the extra 30 miles to the next town, Sheridan, because the risk of stopping for 5 minutes at a gas station in Pine Bluff is considered too great. It's not about being paranoid. It's about making a calculated risk assessment based on years of experience and stories of robberies, carjackings, or worse, happening at places as mundane as a gas pump or a convenience store parking lot. This is the tragedy of Pine Bluff. It's not a city of evil people. It's a city that has been largely abandoned by the American economy and is now trapped in a vicious cycle. The disconnect between its historic, almost stately appearance and the grim reality of daily life is profound. It's a place where the danger isn't hidden in dark alleys. It's out in the open, a constant presence that has shaped the lives of everyone who remains. Stopping here, even for a moment, is to step into a world where the odds are not in your favor. So we find ourselves back in Oklahoma, this time in McAlester. At first glance, McAlester seems like a solid, working-class town. Its identity is inextricably linked to the massive Oklahoma State Penitentiary, a maximum security prison that kind of looms on the edge of town, both physically and psychologically. The prison provides jobs and is a major part of the local economy. But, it also casts a long shadow, contributing to a complex and often dangerous social fabric. Locals will tell you that the problems don't always stay behind the prison walls. The primary issue plaguing McAlester is a deeply entrenched drug and gang culture. Its location along major highway corridors makes it a strategic point for drug trafficking, and this trade has brought with it a level of violence that's, honestly, way out of proportion for a town of its size. The gangs, often with connections to inmates inside the penitentiary, vie for control of the local drug market. And this isn't low-level dealing, it's organized crime that has seeped into the community and created an environment of intimidation and fear. Law enforcement in Pittsburgh County faces an uphill battle. They're dealing with big city problems with small-town resources. The gangs are well-organized and ruthless, and the constant flow of drugs fuels a host of other crimes, from property theft to violent assaults. The warnings locals give to outsiders are direct and serious. They'll tell you to be aware of who is around you, to avoid certain parts of town entirely, especially after dark, and to never ever get involved in a dispute, no matter how minor it seems. The potential for a minor confrontation to escalate into life-threatening violence is very real. The generational aspect of the problem is particularly tragic. For some families in McAlester, crime and incarceration are a cycle. Children grow up in households where gang affiliation and criminal activity are normalized. With limited economic opportunities outside of the prison system or illicit trades, breaking that cycle is incredibly difficult. This creates a permanent undercurrent of instability in the community, a sense that trouble is always just below the surface, waiting to erupt. So, while McAlester is home to many hard-working, honest people, it's also a town wrestling with demons that are bigger than itself. The presence of the penitentiary, the strategic location for trafficking, and the generational poverty have created a perfect storm. The advice to be cautious here isn't an insult to the town. It's a practical warning based on the undeniable risks. It's a place where you need to keep your head on a swivel, where stopping for gas requires a level of situational awareness you might not be used to. Our journey now takes us north to the Rust Belt, to Saginaw, Michigan. Saginaw's story is one that's been repeated in countless cities across the region. It was once a powerhouse of American industry, a thriving center for manufacturing and automotive parts. The jobs were plentiful, the pay was good, and the city was filled with pride and prosperity. But, starting in the latter half of the 20th century, the factories began to close, one by one. The industrial decline wasn't just an economic event, it was a cataclysm that ripped the soul out of the city, leaving behind a legacy of unemployment, decay, and crime. Today, Saginaw is consistently ranked among the most violent cities in America. The violent crime rate here is not just high, it's astronomical, often several times the national average. The once bustling neighborhoods are now marked by abandoned homes and vacant lots, a phenomenon so common it's been dubbed urban prairie. These empty spaces, while hauntingly quiet during the day, can become incredibly dangerous at night, providing cover for criminal activity and making entire sections of the city perilous to navigate. Talking to someone from the Saginaw area, you get a real sense of the daily risks. They might tell you a story about a friend or neighbor who was robbed at gunpoint while pumping gas, or about the constant worry of their car being stolen. There's a common piece of advice: know where you're going and don't deviate from the main, well-lit roads. Getting lost in Saginaw can put you in a very bad situation, very quickly. There's a sentiment that the city is divided into zones, and straying into the wrong one, even by a few blocks, can have serious consequences. The challenges faced by the residents who have stayed are immense. The city government is struggling with a decimated tax base, which means fewer resources for police, fire departments, and schools. This creates a feedback loop. High crime drives more people away, which further reduces tax revenue, which further hampers the city's ability to combat crime. It's a downward spiral that has been turning for decades, and for the people caught in it, there are no easy answers. They are resilient, but they are also living in a state of constant vigilance. Saginaw stands as a stark monument to the human cost of deindustrialization. It's a city filled with people who were left behind by a changing economy, and the result has been a breakdown of social order in many areas. The warnings to be careful are not an exaggeration. They are a necessary survival guide for a city where the shadow of its industrial past has given way to a very present danger. It's a place where you fill up your tank on the outskirts and hope you don't hit a red light in the wrong part of town. Let's head south to Anniston, Alabama, a place nicknamed the Model City when it was founded as a planned industrial town in the late 19th century. The intention was to create a perfectly laid out, orderly community. But today, that name feels like a cruel joke. Anniston is now known for something entirely different, one of the highest violent crime rates per capita in the United States. The model of order and safety has been replaced by a reality of economic hardship and pervasive violence that makes it a place many people actively avoid. The numbers are genuinely shocking for a city of its size. Your chances of becoming a victim of a violent crime in Anniston are alarmingly high. This isn't just a statistical anomaly, it's a lived experience for the residents. Public spaces, which should be centers of community life, are often viewed with suspicion and fear. Parks are empty, streets are quiet after dark, and there's a general feeling that you have to be constantly on guard. The economic collapse that hit Anniston was brutal, with the closure of a major army depot and other manufacturing plants gutting the local economy. A local story that perfectly encapsulates the danger might go something like this. A woman tells her college-age son, who is driving home for the holidays, to time his trip so he doesn't have to stop for gas anywhere near Anniston. "I don't care if you have to drive on fumes to get to Pell City or Oxford," she might say. "You are not stopping at that gas station off the interstate in Anniston. It's not worth the risk." This isn't just a mother's worry, it's a specific location-based warning rooted in countless incidents and a shared community understanding of where the danger zones are. The problem is compounded by a lack of resources and a sense of hopelessness. When jobs disappear and poverty takes hold, crime often follows. For many young people in Anniston, the lack of legitimate opportunities makes the allure of illegal activities more powerful. This creates a self-perpetuating cycle of violence that the underfunded police department struggles to contain. The trust between the community and law enforcement can also be strained, making it even harder to solve crimes and break the cycle. The model city is now a case study in urban decay. The bones of the planned community are still there, in the layout of the streets and some of the historic architecture. But the spirit of the place has been fundamentally altered by decades of economic decline and the rampant crime that followed. It's a town where the threat of violence is a constant companion, and the simple act of stopping for gas is considered a dangerous gamble. It's a stark reminder that a city's nickname and its reality can be two very different things. We now travel to the high desert of New Mexico, to the city of Gallup. Known as the Indian capital of the world, and a major stop along the historic Route 66, Gallup has a rich cultural heritage. It sits at a crossroads of Native American traditions and classic American road trip nostalgia. But this crossroads is also a hotspot for some of the most severe social problems in the nation, leading to a level of violence and public danger that, honestly, shocks many visitors who are just expecting to see some beautiful scenery and buy authentic crafts. Gallup's problems are deeply intertwined with staggering rates of substance abuse, particularly alcoholism. The city has a tragically high number of alcohol-related deaths per capita. This epidemic fuels a chaotic and often violent environment, especially in the public spaces of the town. The visible desperation and the unpredictable behavior of individuals under the influence create a constant sense of unease. This isn't a problem that's hidden away. It's right out in the open, on the streets, in the parks, and in the parking lots of local businesses. A common warning you'll hear from people familiar with the area is to be extremely careful at the gas stations and convenience stores, especially those right off Interstate 40. The advice is to get your gas, do not engage with anyone who approaches you, get back in your car, and lock your doors immediately. You might hear an anecdote about a traveler who was aggressively panhandled, or worse, someone who had their car broken into while they were inside paying for fuel. The stories are numerous, and they all carry the same theme: vulnerability is exploited here. The city is also the service hub for a vast impoverished rural area, including the nearby Navajo Nation and Zuni Pueblo. This brings many people into town who are struggling with extreme poverty and lack of access to services, further straining Gallup's already underfunded social and law enforcement systems. The police are in a constant state of crisis management, dealing with everything from public intoxication to violent assaults, and they are simply overwhelmed by the sheer volume of calls. Gallup's situation is a complex tragedy. It's a place of immense cultural beauty and historical significance, but it's also a place drowning in the consequences of historical trauma, systemic poverty, and addiction. The result is an environment that can be genuinely dangerous for an unsuspecting traveler. The nostalgia of Route 66 is a thin veneer over a harsh reality. When you're in Gallup, you have to understand that you are in a place with a unique and intense set of challenges, and taking precautions is not just wise, it's essential. We return to Louisiana, this time to the city of Alexandria, which sits almost directly in the center of the state, earning it the nickname, the Heart of Louisiana. From a distance, Alexandria, or Alex as it's known locally, has a certain charm. It boasts a zoo, museums, and a riverfront that hints at a pleasant, family-friendly town. But pull back the curtain, and you'll find a city with a violent crime problem so severe that it consistently places it among the most dangerous places in the country. The heart of Louisiana, it turns out, is beating with a frantic, violent rhythm. The disconnect between its appearance and its reality is, honestly, pretty jarring. The city's crime rate is not just a little high, it's often more than 5 times the national average. The violence is so commonplace that it has become a grim part of the local culture. You'll hear a chillingly casual phrase from residents: "In Alex, everybody knows somebody who's been shot." And yeah, this isn't an exaggeration for dramatic effect. It's a simple, horrifying statement of fact for many who live there, reflecting how deeply violence has penetrated the community. When you ask for advice about stopping in Alexandria, the warnings are specific and urgent. A common piece of advice for someone who absolutely has to stop for gas is to pick a well-lit, busy station right off the main highway, and even then, to keep the engine running and the doors locked while you pump your gas. The implication is clear. You need to be ready to leave at a moment's notice. The threat of carjacking or robbery is considered that immediate and that real. Like many cities on this list, Alexandria's problems are rooted in a combination of economic decline, concentrated poverty, and systemic issues that have been simmering for decades. The loss of manufacturing jobs and the closure of a nearby Air Force base hit the economy hard. This, combined with what many residents describe as years of political neglect and corruption, has created a city where public safety feels like an afterthought in many neighborhoods. The police are doing what they can, but they are fighting a tide of social and economic decay. So while you might see brochures promoting Alexandria's cultural attractions, the reality on the ground is one of hypervigilance. The city serves as a powerful example of how a place can project one image while its residents live a completely different and far more dangerous reality. In the heart of Louisiana, the advice is to protect your own. For a traveler, that means understanding the risks are real and that your best bet might be to ensure your heart, and the rest of you, keeps moving right on through. Our travels now take us to a city that holds a sacred place in American history, Selma, Alabama. The name itself evokes powerful images of the civil rights movement, of the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and of the courageous struggle for voting rights. But the Selma of today is facing a different kind of struggle, one against crippling poverty, population loss, and a staggering rate of violent crime. The city that was a symbol of hope and progress for the nation is now a place that its own residents warn can be incredibly dangerous. The historical significance of Selma cannot be overstated, but for the people who live there now, that history doesn't put food on the table or keep them safe at night. For decades, Selma has been in a state of steep decline. The population has plummeted as jobs have vanished, leaving behind a city with a shrinking tax base and growing desperation. This economic despair has fueled a crime wave that makes Selma one of the most violent cities in Alabama, a grim distinction for a place with such a proud past. A local perspective offers a sobering reality check. You might talk to someone who grew up in Selma and has watched the city change. They might tell you with a sense of sorrow, "This isn't the same town I grew up in." You have to watch your back now, even during the day. They might advise against visiting the historic sites alone and strongly warn against being in the wrong part of town after dark. The advice to not stop for gas is common here too, born from a real fear of being a target for a crime of opportunity. The Edmund Pettus Bridge still stands as a powerful monument, but just blocks away from it, you can find neighborhoods plagued by violence, drugs, and decay. The juxtaposition is honestly heartbreaking. The city is trapped between its monumental past and its perilous present. The police department is understaffed and overwhelmed, trying to maintain order in a community where the social fabric has been tearing apart for years. The story of Selma is a complex American tragedy. It's a reminder that winning historic victories doesn't guarantee future prosperity or safety. The city's current struggles are a testament to the deep-seated economic and social challenges that still plague many parts of the rural South. For a traveler, it's a place to be approached with respect for its history, but also with a sober understanding of its current dangers. The fight in Selma continues, but today, for many, it's a fight for simple survival. Our final stop is a city whose name has become almost synonymous with urban decay and extreme danger: East St. Louis, Illinois. Sitting just across the Mississippi River from its more famous namesake in Missouri, East St. Louis is a city that has been in a state of crisis for more than half a century. It's not just a city with a high crime rate. For many years, it held the title of the most dangerous city in America. The warnings about this place are not subtle. They are absolute. The story of East St. Louis is a cautionary tale of catastrophic deindustrialization, white flight, and political corruption on a staggering scale. Once a bustling industrial city with a massive stockyard and numerous factories, it fell victim to a complete economic collapse. The jobs left, the tax base evaporated, and the city's infrastructure and social services crumbled into ruin. At one point, the city was so broke it couldn't afford to pay its garbage collectors, leading to piles of trash rotting in the streets. The level of violence that took root in this environment is hard to comprehend. The homicide rate has, at times, been more than 15 times the national average. The police force, decimated by budget cuts, has been historically unable to cope. The warnings from anyone in the greater St. Louis area are stark and universal. Do not go to East St. Louis. Not for any reason. If you get a flat tire on the interstate passing through, the advice is to drive on the rim until you are out of the city limits. That's how serious the reputation is. The appearance of the city is post-apocalyptic in some areas. Entire blocks consist of nothing but vacant lots and the shells of burned-out buildings. The sense of abandonment is, honestly, total. It's a landscape of failure, where the American dream went to die. For the residents who remain, life is a daily struggle for survival, in an environment with few resources and constant threats. They are some of the most resilient people you could ever meet, but they are living in conditions that most Americans cannot even imagine. East St. Louis is the ultimate example on our list. It represents the absolute worst-case scenario of urban collapse in America. The contrast between the gleaming arch of St. Louis, Missouri, visible just across the river, and the devastation of East St. Louis is one of the most jarring sights in the country. There are no nuanced warnings here. The message is simple, and has been for decades. Do not stop. The risk is not worth it. It is a city that serves as a grim, final warning on our journey through the nation's forgotten danger zones. We've just driven through 10 towns that challenge our entire perception of safety in America. These aren't just names on a list. They are communities grappling with real, life-altering problems that don't make the national news. The stories we've heard and the warnings from locals paint a picture of our country that's far more complex, and in some places, far more dangerous than we like to admit. The real map of risk in America isn't about big cities versus small towns. It's about opportunity versus desperation, funding versus neglect, hope versus fear. The next time you're on a road trip and you see that gas light come on, maybe you'll think a little differently about where you choose to stop. This isn't about fear-mongering. It's about awareness. It's about understanding the world around you so you can make smarter, safer decisions for yourself and your family. The world is a complicated place, and being prepared is the best tool you can have. Think you know where America's most dangerous places really are? Stick around and trust me, you're not ready for what's next. The stories we've covered today are just the beginning. There are countless other places with their own unique challenges and warnings. Our goal here is to shed light on them, to understand them, and to learn from them. If you believe in the power of that knowledge, then I'll give you that one last reminder. Hit subscribe, not for the algorithm, for situational awareness. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you in the next one.